We have our first presentation on Anti-Sati campaign by Dr. J. Ravikumar Stephen for 20 minutes. Let me introduce him to the audience here. Bishop Dr. J. Ravikumar Stephen is a polymathic leader whose career spans industrial human resources, international diplomacy, and spiritual reformation. He currently serves as a bishop in the Episcopal Church and CEO of Fabulous Management Consultants. He's a triple doctorate scholar holding a PhD in management from University of Madras, in parapsychology from Helen University, Netherlands, and PhD in biblical classical languages from Colorado University, USA, with a post-graduation in social work. Bishop was ordained by the Church of England in 1992 and is founder of the Dravidianism Revival Center, the Peace of the People of South Asia, and the Sages of the New Covenant. A peace diplomat, Dr. Ravikumar played a pivotal role in the reopening of the Karachi train service in February 2006 and was the second management consultant to address the Management Association of Pakistan. His research investigates the history of Tamil people, tracing migrations from Africa through genetic, archaeological, and linguistic evidence. And he's currently translating the Tirukkural into global languages with a focus on the Dravidian languages of northern India. We invite Bishop Dr. J. Ravikumar Stephen G. to speak on the topic Anti-Sati campaign and abolition. His presentation is titled The Mirage of Tradition, Deconstructing Sati and the Restoration of Widow Remarriage in India. Over to Bishop.
Greetings in the precious name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Welcome to the presentation on human dignity, social justice focused on Sati. Actually, if you want to analyze the origin of Sati, first of all, we need to understand that Sati is not indigenous to this South Asia. Widow's remarriage is the original form of the Indian and South Asian culture. Sati is an imported one and institutionalized later. To understand this, we need to understand the Indian tribes living in the forest. Particularly, there is a tribe called living in Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, and Chhattisgarh. They have a word called path or path. This particular word denotes remarriage. And similarly, there is another Dravidian community called Korwa. They have a concept called Mayari. That's also widow remarriage. And whether it is Kurik, Oran, Ho, Ashur, or Toda communities, remarriage is accepted in all these communities. To put it in a nutshell, permanent widowhood is never prevalent in the Indian society, particularly in the Dravidian and indigenous communities of India. And if we have to bring a parallel, the Deuteronomy talks about a widow marrying the brother-in-law. This is called Yibum in Hebrew. The equivalent word or the system in Dravidian Gond tribe is Sildu path or Devar path or Tange Velad path. You may wonder why so many names. Basically, they are spread across in several states. So due to the influence of the local language, the name changes accordingly. For example, in Hindi, brother-in-law means Devar, so Devar path comes in. If you look at the map, there is a red area. This red area is called the Sinthosa, and here where the co-cremation emerged. Archaeologist Elena found that co-cremation was prevalent among the Sintasa culture, and they were basically pastoral culture people. But after inventing the chariots with spoked wheels, they invaded other communities and popularized this culture. For example, the Greek Thracian tribes adopted this, but not in toto, but as a co-burial system. In the Indian continent, if we really understand, most of the heroes or the powerful rulers were never from South Asia or from India. They were either Indo-Scythians or Indo-Parthians or Indo-Bactrians or Indo-Greeks. Huns and Kushans from Andronova culture. They invaded and ruled South Asia and introduced this co-creation culture into South Asia. These people were later became the Rajputs like Gujas, who institutionalized this practice and called it Sati. And if we have to see the cultural accounts where it really prevailed, in Mahabharata, most of the deceased heroes' wives ascended into the funeral pyre of their husbands. And similarly, the Greek historian documents argument between two Indian wives of Sashi Gupta, who was slain during the battle in Persia, and Diodorus documents this. Actually, after the death of Alexander the Great, there were conflict between the generals, and Sashi Gupta was one among them, and he was killed in the battle, and two wives of Sashi Gupta were competing with each other who would perform the sati. And if we go into the scriptural aspect, Rig Veda prescribes that a widow proceeds to Yogi Nagre, that means place of rebirth, following the deceased husband. That means immediately after the death of the husband, the wife has to proceed to the place of rebirth. Similar reference we find in Atharva Veda as well, which suggests that the wife should lie by the side of the husband's lifeless body to preserve the ancient culture. And in this slide, you will find two pictures. To your right, what you see is called the Stone pillar, which documents the sati done by the wife of Goparaja, the chieftain who accompanied Bhanugupta in 510 AD. This pillar is found in Madhya Pradesh, and this is a very important document because in this archaeological findings, there are inscriptions which describes that Bhanugupta and their ancestors are not South Asians or Indians. They are from outside. They came and settled. So this is yet another evidence that the people who perform sati are not from South Asia or India. They are from outside and they came and practiced this. To the left, what you see is the other inscriptions. This inscription belongs to 1057 AD, in which it records a woman named Dekha, daughter of a Kung ruler. She performed sati on the death of Icha, who was killed by his blood relative Rajendra Chola. So these are the epigraphical evidence that we find regard to sati. Now coming back to how sati was in India, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, the Delhi Sultan, he is the one who pioneered this anti-sati movement. And later, influenced by the Portuguese, Akbar appointed kotwals to monitor the forced sati instances. Actually, Muhammad bin Tughlaq introduced licensing system to ensure that there is a cooling period and no one is forcing the woman to perform sati. And he wanted to ensure that it is done voluntarily. And to monitor this, Akbar appointed kotwals. And later comes Aurangzeb. In 1663, he enforced complete ban on sati. When Portuguese came and occupied Goa, in 1510, they banned the practice of sati. But the Brahmins convinced the governor Pareto to lift the prohibition. Hence, the ban was rescinded in 1555. But the Jesuit missionaries pushed for the ban, and accordingly, the ban on sati was strictly reinstated in 1560 AD by Constantino de Braganza with severe criminal penalties, which included confiscation of the property and other things. Danish people banned sati in Tranquebar in 1628 AD. Similarly, the Dutch banned sati in Chinchura in 1653 AD, viewing it as barbaric. Next slide. See, actually, the Mughals and the Portuguese had very close relationship. Humayun was the one who helped the Mughals to fetch the harbor of Surat. So, the Portuguese ban on sati gave impetus to the Mughals. And accordingly, Akbar and facilitated this. And the Mughals ban facilitated the British individuals to rescue widows from the funeral pyre of their husbands. Now we are going to see two cases. One is of Job Chernock. He was considered the founder of Calcutta. He rescued one Leela, a 15-year-old princess of Patna, and he lived with her till his death. His daughters were later baptized in Madras, and in the picture what you see is a tablet found in the baptismal font in St. Mary's Church in St. George Fort, Madras. In this baptismal font tablet, the whole history, how Job rescued Leela is mentioned. So this is not a fairy tale. It's a documented history. And similarly, Captain Harry Littenton rescued a Maratha Brahmin widow by name Kokila from the kingdom of Tanjavur. Tanjavur was ruled by the Marathas, and after rescuing her, Littenton took Kokila to her parents, and the parents didn't accept her. Then he took Kokila to the king. The king said, I cannot accept a person who has been rescued from the funeral pyre. So then he asked, what shall I do with her? Then he said, you keep her with you. And accordingly, Kokila stayed with Littenton to avoid future problems. The British East India Company transferred him from Tanjavur to... When they lived in... Littenton taught him the Christian tenets, and she accepted Jesus Christ as the personal savior. And after his death, she was baptized, and she founded the first church in Tirunelveli. And now this church has become a shrine for the Protestant Christians. And she dedicated her life for the rehabilitation of the widows. The tablet in black also mentions about the history, how Harry Littenton rescued. Now, while these things were happening, there were representations in the British Parliament, but most of these things were by the missionaries, which was rather emotionally spoken that so much of life is lost, but they didn't have any data. So Shirampur missionaries, William Carey, Joshua Marshman, William Ward conducted a survey on sati. The outcome of the survey was 1803 alone, 438 widows were burnt in Calcutta. They estimated that approximately 10,000 satis must have happened annually across the whole of Bengal. Now you have the data. Next slide, please. So now with this data, they were able to represent the case in the British Parliament. William Wilberforce presented the survey findings to the British Parliament. And Thomas Forwell Buxton initiated the discussion in the British Parliament in 1813. 107 petitions were sought against the ban of sati and presented, and these things were mostly presented by the evangelical Christians belonging to Kalpam sect and the English women who are empathetic towards the widows who are immolating themselves. And hearing to that, next slide please, Lord William Benting passed the Bengal Sati Regulation Act on December 4th, 1829 AD. And this copy reached William Carey on a Sunday morning. So he skipped the Sunday service and started translating the edict into Bengali, believing that any delay would cause a cost of life. But the story didn't end there. Orthodox Hindus, led by the Dharma Sabha, challenged the regulation with their petition to the Privy Council in London. Rajaram Mohan Roy and 300 of his supporters submitted a counter petition, and after analyzing the pros and cons and the consequences and the human values involved, the Privy Council ultimately upheld the ban in 1832. And I have mentioned about getting baptism from Reverend Swartz after the demise of Captain Little. And she was the first indigenous woman to get baptized in Tirunelveli. And in those days, there was an embargo for the company, British East India Company chaplain, to talk about Christ to the locals. But Clorinda spoke to the locals and she made several converts, and Reverend Swartz gave them baptism. But what he noted was, though they have embraced Christianity, when the annual festival of their family Kodai festival, it's on the Kodai festival day, they will go to a place called Kurangani on the banks of River Parni, and they will offer a goat as a sacrifice to their family deity. And this is an annual function, a family fellowship. So though they became Christians, they were participating in that. So sensing the seriousness of the issue, Reverend Swartz introduced. Swartz was basically stationed at Trankubar and Tanjavur area, and he was very friendly with Tipu Sultan. So he brought mangoes from these areas, and this festival of Kurangani festival used to be conducted on the last Tuesday of the Tamil month Ani. And on the very same day, he conducted the march. And initially, the new converts brought goats for the Mambala Sangam, and they were accepted, but it was not sacrificed, but it was auctioned. And as the time moved, the new converts started bringing their own mangoes and bartered that with the mangoes brought from other places. And it is not only the new converts participated in the Mambala Sangam, it was an annual meet for the entire Christian community in Tirunelveli. So the local Christians were also participating in the Mambala Sangam, and lot of offering was collected. And in 1830, Reverend Renius, he is a German CMS missionary, he created the widow welfare fund with the money that was collected from the offertory collected during the Mambala Sangam. Here, Clorinda started the rehabilitation of the widow, and later Reverend Rainius continued the effort of rehabilitating the widows. Next slide, please. Now, after banning the sati, there was no legal framework for widows getting married. So, the British East India Company enacted another legislation, Hindu Widows Remarriage Act in 1856, to facilitate a legal framework. In addition, between 1846 and 47, the British East India Company put pressure on the Indian princely state to ban sati, and accordingly, 23 princely states came forward to ban sati. Banning sati and Widows Remarriage Act was one of the major reasons for Sipai mutiny. Though there was a legal framework to ban sati, in pockets, sati was happening. And the last known sati happened on September 4th, 1787. Mal Singh Shekhawat, belonging to Kachwada Rajput community, he is a BSc graduate and he wanted to become a doctor, and he could not make an entry into a medical college, but he got married to a rich woman living in Jaipur, and they gave their daughter, thinking that their son-in-law is going to become a medical doctor, but he could not make it, and he died at the age of 24. And his wife, Ruth Kanwar, a 10th educated 18-year-old widow, was burnt alive on the husband's funeral pyre. This happened in Rajasthan in 1987. And here we need to understand, Mal Singh died on 3rd, and she performed the sati on the 4th, and the parents who were living 30 kilometers away from the village in Jaipur, they came to know about the death of their son-in-law and the sati of their daughter only on September 5th, based on a paper reporting. On that day, everyone, now you look at the pictures, that day, Rup Kanwar was decorated like a bride, and she was made to sit near the mortal remains of her husband, and the whole villagers came with coconuts and offered it as an offering to the goddess Mother Sati, because they glorified her as a goddess. And another picture, what you see at the right side top corner, is the picture where actually sati has happened. Her lifeless body of her husband was laid on her lap, and big wooden logs were used, and all the coconuts offered as a offering to Rup Kanwar was put so that the burning can happen quickly, and also the big wooden logs do not allow her to escape. This led to the enactment of Commission of Sati Prevention Act 1987. For the first time in the history of India, it criminalized the act, not only the act, but also glorification of sati. This act prohibited building temples, organizing ceremonies, and collecting funds to honor the person who has performed sati. Legal framework cannot control human psyche. Despite court ban, 2 lakhs people attended the Kanwar's 13th day funerary ritual. If you look at, there is a window-like structure. Now, as per the law, they cannot construct a temple, so her house was converted into a shrine, and people can peep through the window and pay homage to her or seek her blessings. Now, this is a makeshift arrangement made near the place where the sati has happened, and people are worshipping her as Sati Mata. And Sati has the potential to re-emerge once again. There are groups which glorify Sati, citing that most of the wives of the Mahabharata have committed Sati. And there is also organizations like Dharam Smriti. They are glorifying this practice, and they have said Sakti ki Bhakti ki. They not only glorified the woman who has performed the Sati, but they are glorifying the husband whose wife has performed the Sati. Now, few years back, there was a film called Batmavan, in which there is a sequence, a group Sati, which is called Jahur, and this was performed. The filmmakers could have put one slide stating that all women performed Sati. Instead, the Jahur sequence ran for more than 12 minutes, and in the bargain, most of the young generation got romanticized with the practice of Sati. I have come across a young medical doctor who wished to permit voluntary Sati in India. Now the onus of safeguarding the future of India is with us. Let us look to the courage of reformers like Rajaram Mohan Rai, Pandit Vidyalankar, and Jyotira Phule, and the resilience of the indigenous Dravidian tribes who choose remarriage over the fire. So this is where we stand, and the future lies ahead of us, and we have to safeguard this. Thank you so much.